Hi folks, you're all very welcome back to 3 Minute Tales. This is the She-Bean and I'm your host, Shanna Key. Now today I want to explore the phenomenon of luck or good fortune. There's an old phrase, the luck of the Irish, which suggests that Irish people are very lucky, and obviously some people are, but some people aren't. So these 3 stories that I have for you today, they're true stories, but they just explore the varying degrees of luck. One guy in particular, he misses his chance of sailing on the Titanic. Another young lad spends the very early part of his life having more mishaps than Frank Spencer. So yeah, some people are lucky, some people are not. I don't know whether you're born lucky or whether you just make your own luck, but nonetheless, I hope you enjoy the videos. If you do, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to leave a comment, you can do so down below. And please, as I said before, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the little notification bell, because it is so important to us here today. So thank you so much. Until the next time, I'm Shanna Key. In 1989, 36-year-old Dubliner Padraig Griffin, a married man and father to 3 young children, was devastated when he lost his job at a local glazing firm in his hometown in West Dublin. With a mortgage to pay and a family to feed, he grew desperate as he struggled to find himself another job. With mounting bills, his unemployment benefit was not enough for him and his family to get by on. So when an opportunity arose for him to moonlight as a doorman at a local nightclub, the cash from the job, along with his social welfare payments, would be just enough to keep the wolf from the door. After working at the club for just 3 weeks, Padraig witnessed a young thug attempting to mug a young woman in the car park and ran to assist her. After a brief exchange of punches, the thug, who was now sporting a black eye and a bloodied nose, ran from the car park, vowing revenge. The following Monday, when Padraig attended his local welfare office, he was quizzed by the welfare official and asked if he had undertaken any paid work over the past number of weeks. Padraig reluctantly lied and said that he hadn't, but when the official told him that a witness had informed them that he had been moonlighting as a bouncer, he admitted his wrongdoing. Immediately his social welfare payments were revoked, and he was told that until he repaid the £240 that he'd already claimed whilst working, not another penny would be paid to him by the department. Completely devastated, he began the short walk home, all the while contemplating the easiest way to tell his wife his bad news. In an act of pure desperation, he stopped at his local grocery store and purchased a £1.50 quick pick lottery ticket. The following Saturday, he and his wife sat in the kitchen of their small terraced house. They both watched TV with amazement as all 6 numbers of his lottery ticket emerged from the lottery tombola. Padraig had won the jackpot of a staggering £867,000. Over the next few years, a series of shrewd investments and the success of a business that he had set up saw Padraig quadruple his winnings, leaving the young couple very rich. Padraig retired in 2005 and now lives in Lanzarote, comfortably with his family. Dubliner James Tidy had always dreamt of travelling the world. His ultimate goal was to emigrate and live in the United States, following in the footsteps of many of his friends and countrymen. So in 1914, after saving all of his hard-earned cash to purchase a ticket to travel to the United States upon the RMS Titanic, he was the envy of many of his workmates and colleagues. James, like many of his friends at the time, was fond of the gargle. And when a number of his drinking buddies insisted on having a final farewell drink with him the night before his departure, he agreed without hesitation, meeting up in his local watering hole, the Brazen Head in Dublin. James and 4 of his closest friends began drinking early in the afternoon. As the day dragged on, Tidy had managed a new personal record of imbibing 16 pints of stout before passing out on the bench outside the bar. The following morning, as the rising sun eventually awoke James from his drunken slumber, he realised that he had missed the steam train that was to bring him from Dublin to Cork, where he was to board the Titanic. Devastated, he thought that his world was about to collapse around him, but fortunately for him, he never managed to board the doomed liner, and when word of the ship's sinking hit the newspaper headlines, everyone told him how fortunate he was. Still with itchy feet, Tidy was now determined to travel. He decided to join the British Army with the promise of seeing the world, However, shortly after recruiting, World War I broke out, and him, along with his regiment, the Royal Irish Fusiliers, he was sent to the Western Front, where only after 2 weeks he was tragically killed by shellfire. His two brothers, John and Frederick, who James had also persuaded to join the army, were both also killed in France before the end of the war. Their sister Edie, on the other hand, was far more fortunate than her brothers. She emigrated to the United States, where she married an extremely wealthy cattle rancher. She went on to have 9 children, one of whom, a daughter, went on to become one of America's most famous TV hosts during the 50s and 60s. In 1992, 12-year-old Belfast schoolboy Kieran Flood's life was tragically changed when he suffered a severe stroke. The child spent 4 months in hospital receiving extensive physiotherapy and prolonged sessions of speech therapy to help him recover from the devastating condition normally associated with older patients. His parents, Margaret and Ollie, were shocked to say the least. But when their young son's condition slowly began to improve, they were overjoyed. The doctors had initially predicted that the effects of the stroke would leave Kieran with life-altering disabilities, but they were left flabbergasted when the young lad showed signs of a remarkable recovery. Astonishingly, he regained complete control of his right arm and leg, and with his speech practically back to normal, he was able to be discharged far earlier than expected. The doctors confirmed to Kieran's parents that he had defied all the odds, and to further improve his recovery, a regime of strict exercise would see Kieran make a full and complete recovery. On the day Kieran was to be discharged, his father Ollie, who was a very heavy drinker, had spent most of the afternoon drinking in a nearby pub. Ollie had parked his car across the road from the hospital and encouraged Kieran to walk the short distance. As the two of them walked across the road, a taxi appeared from nowhere, driving at speed. Fortunately, Ollie was able to jump out of the way, but left his unfortunate son to be struck by the vehicle in the middle of the road. Kieran was severely injured, suffering a broken right hip, 2 broken legs, 4 broken ribs and a fractured skull. He was immediately admitted back into hospital, where he underwent 3 operations to have pins and plates put into his broken legs and hip. The doctors told Kieran's parents that his son was a very lucky child and that he could have been easily killed in the accident. Another 3 months went by before the child was fit enough to be discharged, and on the day of his release, his parents informed Kieran that they had a surprise for him. They were treating him to a trip to Blackpool along with the rest of the family. Still on crutches, Kieran counted down the days until it was time for the family to fly to England and onto their holiday destination. When the time came, Kieran, accompanied by his parents and 3 siblings, excitedly embarked on their trip. 2 days into their week-long stay, Kieran asked his father if he could bring him to a nearby arcade to play video games and slot machines, to which his father agreed. Ollie gave his son £5 and said that he'd meet him back at the entrance in an hour before making his way to the nearest pub. An hour later, after imbibing 5 pints of lager, Ollie met Kieran at the entrance to the arcade. Kieran excitedly told his father that he'd won £12 on the slot machines, and Ollie smiled affectionately. As the two walked back to their hotel and completely engrossed in conversation, they were oblivious to the sound of a loud bell ringing and the rumbling of an approaching tram. Just as they turned around, the tram ploughed into the pair at speed, throwing them like ragdolls into oncoming traffic. Traffic screeched to a halt as the father and son lay motionless on the road. Staring up at the sky, Kieran opened his eyes in total shock. Luckily, his father had borne the brunt of the impact, leaving Kieran completely uninjured. Ollie, however, was not so lucky. He suffered a broken ankle, concussion and superficial cuts and bruises before they were both taken to hospital. When local police called to the hotel to inform Margaret of the accident, one of them remarked that both her son and her husband were 2 lucky individuals, an opinion that Margaret point-blankly refused to agree with. Kieran eventually got his fair share of luck when, after excelling academically at school, he went on to study medicine and now ironically works as an orthopaedic surgeon at the very hospital that treated him as a 12-year-old boy.